So for more than 20 years, Gill McKay has worked with coaches, trainers, HR, and business professionals to amplify their results by helping them use neuroscience in their work. The teaching helps them to increase their clients' self-awareness, their emotional engagement, and awaken their brains to help them achieve deep transformation and change. As the co-founder of My Brain International, which I'm so excited to be a partner with, and to be a master trainer for Down Under, just an amazing organization. And the neurometric profiling instrument Mind, she provides International Coach Federation accredited tools and resources for the appliance of neuroscience. She is also an author of the best-selling book, Stuck. That's it right there. It's an amazing book. And it's for Brain Smart Insights for Coaches, which shares her coaching stories and how clients can create change and understanding the neuroscience behind their challenges. In her talk, Gill will talk about the neuroscience of motivation and how you can tap into your brain power to enhance your motivation and stay on top of your game in uncertain times, something that we all need right now. So put your hands together and please help me welcome from the United Kingdom, Gill McKay.
Hey, thank you so much, Grant. Thank you for that introduction. I hope it's all streaming now. Yep, it's 8 o'clock in the morning here in London. It's actually a sunny day, which is the first time this week. And I'm ready to step into that introduction of, what was it you called me, vibrant? I know I'm the last person of the day, so I will be as high energy, but most importantly, high value as I can. So really, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this summit. I've managed just to catch a couple of them before I've been on, and it's a really amazing community of speakers that you've organized. Fantastic. So, as Grant said, I am Gill McKay. I'm co-founder of a company called My Brain International, and we are dedicated to helping you to apply neuroscience in your work and your life so you can get the best results and step into your best self. Now, I've worked in the learning and development field for many, many years, and I really am passionate about this subject of neuroscience, how tapping into our brain's power, I guess, making friends with your brain and learning a little bit more about how the brain works can really help you to progress and be happier in life. So what our work does is it helps you to understand and embrace what is unique about you, to build that awareness of what makes you, you. And of course, self-awareness is an absolute pivotal key ingredient of emotional intelligence. That whole area of emotional self-awareness and the ability to understand your own emotions and their effects on your life and how you show up in the world. So it's absolutely linked to that whole area of emotional intelligence. So in the My Brain business, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and as Grant said, I'm an author of my book, Stuck, Brain Smart Insights for Coaches. And today I'm going to be shining a light on one of the chapters specifically in my book, the neuroscience of motivation, and giving you a sneak peek inside your brain. So it's only 8 in the morning, as I said, here in London. I am aware that I am the last speaker on the agenda today, and it's 7 o'clock in Australia and late night, perhaps very early in the morning in the US. So I promise I'm not going to get too technical. I'm going to keep it relevant all the way through and without using too many slides. I used my book as a prop. I've got my brain to use as a prop as well. But I'm going to start with a story. A story of a little girl called Anna, a little girl who loves to play outside. Now, Anna has a large garden. She's got a fantastic tree house and lots of areas to play hide and seek with her brother. And every morning she leaps out of bed, she pulls open the curtains, and she's always happy when she sees a bright, sunshiny day, because she knows then that that means she's going to be able to play outside. But one morning she wakes up and the room seems a little darker than usual. And she wonders what that means. And when she opens the curtains, she sees that it's raining. Oh no, she says. I can't play outside with my friends. What on earth am I going to do? She looks down at her dolls in the toy box. She looks over to her books on the bookshelf and her games, but she just can't get excited. This is rubbish. I'm just going to go back to bed, pull the covers over my head and wait until the sun comes out. So imagine that you're Anna. You know, like Anna, we all know how it feels when our mojo or our motivation to do something, when it turns south, when it wanes. And sometimes it really is quite challenging to spark ourselves into action again. So I'm going to be taking you on a journey into the brain to understand what is happening, to share some ideas from some academic research, some current research, and I think most importantly, to give you some insights as to what you can do to give yourself a boost of motivation when you need it, knowing that you'll be working with your brain and making friends with your brain, not against it, no matter whether it is a rainy day or a sunny day. So the world of neuroscience has really opened up in recent years, because no longer do scientists have to rely totally on the results of autopsies, so cutting up dead bodies, or from observing behavior of rats in labs, in experiments, or from investigating people who've got some sadly severe neurological conditions. These areas, of course, give us great insights, but in the world is the wonder of technology, and that has really helped our growth in knowledge, and it's helped us to take a look inside healthy brains of healthy human beings, and therefore be able to look at that physiological basis of human behavior. And what this has done is it's massively opened up that whole brain science area to all of us who are interested in psychology, behavioral sciences, human behavior, and the whole learning and development area. So now the neuroscience field is no longer just applicable in medicine or in the clinical medical sphere, but we're also able to bring it into the world of business and into day-to-day life. And it really is becoming increasingly useful for us all to be able to understand a little bit about our brains so we can interact with the world more effectively. Now, a bit of a red flag. Inevitably, neuroscience is becoming popular and fashionable. You know, it's topical. So like perhaps with the US election, there's a lot of fake news around it. So if you pick up any magazine or some magazines, you may find a page on your neuro horoscope or some adverts for a neuro vitamin pill. And I even saw an advert online the other day for a neuro pool cube to guarantee that you pocket all the balls on the pool table. There's a lot of neuro nonsense. So what we do in our business is we bridge the gap between the weighty academia out there, that great stuff, but it's difficult to access. We bridge the gap between that and all that neuro nonsense to make neuroscience really accessible and relevant to people in everyday life and also in the business world. So it's all about in our business for making it useful to you so that we can all understand ourselves better, build that emotionally intelligent self-awareness, better relationships with yourself and others, so that you can create positive change and take those positive steps in your life. So I'm going to take a positive step now into the subject of motivation. And this is a key area that I coach my clients around, or work with my clients around. So as Grant did before, let's have a stretch and let's take a breath and learn how we can help Anna. Yeah, it's more than just moving side to side, Grant. Learn how we can help Anna to have a wonderful day despite the rain outside. And I want to start with a new term, or it was a new term to me, called brownout. Yeah, brownout. Have you ever heard of brownout? I hadn't until I read an article. You will most likely have heard of blackout. So we all know that blackout means that the power is lost, so such as electricity. Now, brownout evidently in a factory setting, is when the factory runs on lower wattage. So you can use it for a metaphor in the world of work or our lives. It's a way to describe when people are just not firing on all cylinders, where their spark is disappearing, they're running on lower wattage, they're becoming disengaged and demotivated. Now, this was coined from a company called Corporate Balance Concept, and in their research, they reported, let me just check, that around 40% of the 1,000 executives that they surveyed suffered from some sort of brownout and an associated lowering of motivation and engagement. Guys, that's 400 people out of 1,000 in this piece of research. It really is food for thought, certainly at work. And we all know how that lack of motivation feels. Like Anna, in my story, it just feels rubbish, and it can easily spiral into us beating ourselves up. Now, brownout doesn't just happen at work. It happens all the time. It can happen in all contexts of our lives. So what can we do about it? How can we avoid this thing called brownout, this new term that we've learned today? And how can we define motivation and learn what to do about it? So, simply put, motivation drives our behavior. We all have different reasons for getting up in the morning, doing what we do every day. But on some days, it just feels harder than others, like Anna, you know, to get up when your alarm goes off, to go perhaps for a run, or to focus on your goals for that day at work, or to make 2 sales calls in the morning, or to help your kids with their homework, when all you really want to do is hunker down under the duvet, have a duvet day and watch Netflix. You're really experiencing brownout there. So human beings, we're driven to undertake activities that reward us or remove us from threat or punishment. Threats in our ancestors' time could be, an Amazon purchase last night, a saber-toothed tiger. Or nowadays, the saber-toothed tiger could be an angry manager at work. Rewards could be a glass of wine at the end of a very busy working day, or watching the next episode of a new crime series that you're enjoying on TV. So this drive towards or away from something, it reinforces our behaviors, so we're motivated to do it again and again and again. So a busy work day will cue you every work day to pour a glass of wine or to put on the TV, or the appearance of your manager, saber-toothed tiger, may motivate you to pick up the phone and pretend you're talking to a customer. So at a fundamental level, your brain treats survival needs as rewarding. What we need to survive, and we do, it rewards us and it motivates us to fulfill those needs. Motivation drives our behavior. So motivation, or lack of it, is usually behind the choices we make, what we do, and therefore the results that we get. So clearly, if you're hungry, you're going to go and look for a snack. It might be a biscuit, it might be an apple, but you'll look for a snack. And if you're tired, you may be motivated to take a nap, or if you're stuck in some way, you may be motivated to phone a friend, or maybe read a book called Stuck. But here's the thing. Motivation is not an algorithm. It's not a formula or a rule book that you can just roll out and apply, or if you're a manager, you can just give to someone. You know, we all have different experiences, different contexts, different backgrounds, different DNA, different goals and dreams. You know, the list goes on. We are all different. So some people, if they are stuck, they're not going to read a book or phone a friend for help. They're going to bury their head in the sand and ignore the problem. Or maybe they're just going to power through and research the problem until late at night when they think they're going to be able to solve it. The kids were all motivated to do things in different ways. So I want to share with you two basic categories of motivation that are helpful to understand what is going on. And I'm going to show some PowerPoints at this point. I don't like talking too much over PowerPoint. So periodically, I'm going to come back and speak to the camera to make this a bit more conversational from my home office. So I'm going to show you some slides when I'm giving you some definitions or when I'm explaining some of the models or the academics that you can use. And then right at the end, I'm going to have a big summary slide of everything that we've talked about today and a link to where you can access all of my research references of what we've covered today. So let's do a little bit of sharing, see if we can successfully do that. I'm absolutely sure the technology will work, and we're on. Here we go. Fantastic. The tech's fantastic. So here are two broad categories of motivation. So intrinsic motivation, it involves doing something because it's personally rewarding to you. So when you are intrinsically motivated, your behavior is motivated by your internal desire to do something for its own sake. So for example, your personal joy or personal enjoyment of doing it, because say you want to learn something new. It's about doing things, it's about expanding and learning without the need for an external reward. Now, extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, it involves doing something because you want to earn a reward or avoid a punishment. So here, your motivation is, or your behavior is, I guess, motivated by an external factor that's pushing you to do something so that you get that reward, or you're avoiding a consequence, you're avoiding a punishment, you're moving away from that possible consequence. So, for instance, on the intrinsic side, maybe it's something like you want to watch a TED talk because you want to learn something new and you're inspired by that. Where an extrinsic reason may be because you know your manager wants you to talk in the next team meeting about the topic in the TED talk, and you don't want to get into trouble if you get it wrong. You want to do really well. Maybe intrinsically you might enjoy going for a run and doing some exercise because you want to, you know that you've got a stressy day and you know it feels fantastic when you go running afterwards. Whereas an extrinsic reason could be that you wanting to go for a run because you want to lose some of that lockdown weight. You don't want to pay at your local slimming club, or your doctor's told you that you have to do it for health reasons. That's an extrinsic reason. And maybe you're motivated perhaps to clean up your home office like I did because you want to feel organized and you love a tidy space. Well, that's an intrinsic reason. Or maybe that motivation comes to clean your home office because you have a Zoom call with your team, or you're coming online to speak and you don't want to have a messy environment or be teased about the environment behind you. Now, that's an extrinsic reason. So intrinsic and extrinsic. But either way, all of our reward systems, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, our reward systems in the brain are all about this neurotransmitter called dopamine that I'm sure you've heard of. This is made in the brain and it's released when your brain is expecting a reward. And when you come to associate a certain activity with pleasure, whether it's that glass of wine after a busy day, or whether it's a snack when you're hungry, that lovely apple, just anticipation of it can be enough to raise your dopamine levels. So the brain, here's the brain, if you can see the little screen, it has around 86 billion neurons. It's an extraordinary amount, but only a tiny little amount of them, around 20,000 of that 86 billion neurons, only a tiny little bit of them generate dopamine. Most of them are in the middle part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, those midbrain structures, and the prefrontal cortex, this top part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain. Now, I love this quote from evolutionary psychiatrist, what a job title, Emily Deans. Dopamine is what makes humans so successful. So researchers have actually found that human beings have about 3 times as many dopamine producing neurons in their brains as other primates and higher order animals. So dopamine has other jobs such as motor control. It's a loss of dopamine is apparent in Parkinson's, for instance. So the drugs for Parkinson's are to help more dopamine receptor sites. It's also, it works where it's apparent in and needed in planning and some prefrontal executive functions. And of course, it gets a lot of attention in the study of addiction when reward moves to perhaps dangerous cravings. Now, if you get rewarded, you're going to feel that lovely burst of dopamine. So you're going to want to do it again. So dopamine doesn't just make you feel rewarded in the moment. It's also what I call the incentive, the motivation neurotransmitter. It helps the brain to feel more motivated to do something again. So then your body has the energy, it feels energetic enough to pull that lever again and again. So it really does underpin your motivation. And the trick is to work out what it is that rewards you, so what you are moving towards, what you're moving away from, so that you can get that dopamine hit and do things that are engaging and helpful and additive to your life. Now, a little bit of a red flag here. It is important to just warn ourselves and tread carefully by waving this red flag. Tread carefully with extrinsic rewards, those external dopamine boosters. If you're attempting to motivate others, for instance, so if you're a parent with your child or a manager with your team, studies have shown that offering too many rewards for activities that people are already pretty intrinsically motivated to do anyway, it can actually have the opposite effect, and it can decrease motivation. So it can make the activity start to feel like work, and it can kill any underlying intrinsic motivation that was there in the first place. So what's happening is that those rewards can crowd out and undermine what they're doing, what the person's doing, and that's called over-justification. And it can also be called the undermining effect as well. So if you work in business and you're looking to incentivize your staff and give them lots of bonuses or feedback, just be careful, be sincere. And also a really good strategy is to ask them what motivates them in the first place. You know, a one size, as I've said, does not fit all. And sometimes we assume that throwing money as cash incentive is going to be automatically motivating. And a lot of motivation research, neuroscientific based research, involves money. Money is a strong emotional trigger for a lot of people. And it's an area called neuroeconomics. So I want to just explain an experiment that was done in an over-justification area to look at this. And yes, as the picture said, it involves pizzas. So this was an experiment in a successful factory. It was a semiconductor factory. Employees were paid really well. Employee engagement was pretty high. They enjoyed their jobs. And they were given in the experiment a number of different incentives at the beginning of every day to look at their motivation, and the measure was going to be productivity. Was the productivity going to increase or not? Now, one group, there were four groups. One group was told that if they hit their targets, they would get a bonus of $30 a day. That's pretty high. Another group were offered pizza vouchers. A third group were told that they would receive a note of thanks from the chief exec. And employees in a fourth group weren't offered anything. Now, who do you think was the winner? Yep, the picture gives it away. It was the pizza voucher with a 7% increase in productivity. And interestingly, the CEO's note of thanks was a pretty close second. And the cash came third. But on the second day, the cash incentivized group performed 14% worse than the employees who weren't given any incentive at all. And I think it's really interesting that the effect of the cash bonus, you could summarize it as increasing costs for the company because they're shelling out buckets of $30, but also decreasing employee motivation and productivity. But also what was interesting was that the pizza vouchers were used at lunchtime so that the employees could enjoy eating together. It was really interesting collaborative motivation. So don't be put off extrinsic rewards. Praise, bonuses, or as the slide says, prizes, they can work for those sort of dull tasks when there's little intrinsic motivation in the first place. You know, so we all know that, say, star charts work for kids, and for us adults, I find it really motivational to tick off those tasks I don't enjoy from my to-do list. Here's my list for this week. And it really is motivational just to tick it off. So, and tangible extrinsic rewards, so that cash incentive, that praise, they may even result in unexpected motivation. So you might actually learn something new. So an example for me, for instance, motivating myself to do my admin first thing in the morning, I then reward myself with a cup of tea and a biscuit at 10 o'clock. And during building that habit and laying down those rewarding neural pathways and those dopamine boosts, I've learned to be more productive. I've learned to use some productivity tools to help me be even quicker at doing my admin first thing in the morning. Right, so I'm going to stop the share now just for a few minutes and come off slide again, take a short break, and I'm going to summarize this section for you. So we've talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We've talked about dopamine as an incentive neurotransmitter, and to be careful not to over justify or undermine with too many extrinsic rewards. So something you can do for yourselves of an exercise after this or another day, just ask yourself, what am I intrinsically motivated by, and what am I extrinsically motivated by? Just give yourself some time to think about these, and it could very well lead to an interesting list. Simple questions. What do I find rewarding, both intrinsically and extrinsically, internally and externally? Ask yourself those questions. Now, for the rest of this session, we're going to mainly look at the intrinsic side. Grant has given me 50 minutes. That's 50 minutes. So what we're going to do, I know I'm going to fill up your brain, but what I'm going to do is help you to fill up your brain with sparky ideas, to say goodbye to this brownout that we've learned about, to keep on top of your motivation. And I'm wanting to share with you one of my favorite models in this whole area of motivation. It's a really well researched area called self-determination theory. And what this says is that human beings have three basic psychological needs: the need for autonomy, the need for mastery, and the need for purpose. When we go back to the slides, I'm going to unpick those for you and give you some ideas as to how you can use them. But let's just define what it's all about. Self-determination, if you think about the definition of the word, it helps you feel that you have control over your choices and your life. And self-determination has a big impact on your motivation. Of course, we're all going to feel more motivated to take some action when we feel that what we do has an effect on the outcome and it affects us positively. So self-determination theory grew out of the work of two psychologists, two gentlemen, Edward Dacey and Richard Ryan. They first introduced their ideas way back in the 1980s. In 1985, they had a book called Self-Determination and Intrinsic Motivation in Human Behavior. That's a grand title. But what's great is that whilst it was initiated in the 80s, it really has evolved. It's continually been researched, and it's been researched increasingly in the neuroscience area to link these intrinsic motivators to the brain so we can learn even more. So back to some slides. Let me go back here. I'm always worried that I put it on the wrong thing. Here we go from the, where we go, we've been through that. Let's do from the current slide. We've done that one. Here we go. Self-determination theory. So these are the areas of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I'm going to break them down for you and look at some of the neuroscience that underpins them. So autonomy It's around the freedom to choose the work that you do, to live your life the way you want it, and choose the work that you do, the way you do your work, and your ability to make decisions. Often this is the reason that people leave the corporate world to work on their own. They're looking for that motivator of autonomy. Mastery is about building your expertise. It's about learning. It's about building an expert status and deepening your knowledge so that you feel that you can add value, you can do your best work. But I also like to add confidence in here, because mastery gives us confidence to take action. And purpose is about understanding your why. It's about connecting to the reason that you're doing this work, or living your life the way that you're living it, and the contribution that that makes to the world. So let's share some autonomy research. So this piece of research that I love, you can see that it was a collaboration if you look at the reference at the bottom. This was a collaboration of researchers from many areas, from Reading in the UK, Rochester and California Institute of Technology in the US, and also Tokyo in Japan. They looked at this thing that's called self-determined choice, using brain scans. So they were scanning all the participants throughout the whole experiments. Participants played a timed, quite a challenging puzzle task using a stopwatch. And they either selected the stopwatch themselves or they were given one. So, and it's quite extraordinary that the results over several trials and several groups consistently showed a better performance from those groups who had selected the stopwatch. They'd chosen the kit that they were going to use in the experiment, than those who hadn't selected it. And the choice of stopwatch was absolutely irrelevant to how difficult the task was. And there was more activity in the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, this part of the brain, while they were increasing that performance, that thinking part of the brain in that group. And also autonomy, it opens up this whole topic, this whole area of curiosity. So if you have freedom to experiment, then of course you're going to open up your ideas rather than narrowing them down, and that's motivating. So this one was a Californian study. You can see the reference at the bottom. I've got a link at the end of this to show you all of my references if you're interested. In this one, participants reviewed more than 100 questions, and some of them were pretty interesting and pretty curious. But at the same time, they were also shown unrelated photographs. Now, when they were curious and interested in those questions, which the brain scans showed, what was interesting was that they also remembered and recalled more of the completely unrelated faces, the completely unrelated pictures. So what the researchers concluded, what they found was that if the people had been curious about the question topic, and then before the answer had even appeared for the question, their curiosity was already engaging that dopamine, that brain's reward system, through anticipation. And that stayed even after 24 hours with that satisfying boost in dopamine too. So curiosity in itself is motivating. And it also helps you to open up to unrelated areas from that topic at hand and recall them too. So curiosity helps us learn, which of course we know, but now we've got it proven from neuroscience, which is great. Let's stop the share. So ask yourself, what is it that you can choose to do every day? Where can you take your power and freedom into your life? You know, do you feel forced by a deadline that somebody else has given you, or do you feel you have flexible choice? Where can you put that flexible choice into your life? The research shows us, of course, that choice makes for positive motivation. Just making a list of what you can control, what you have choice over, and what you can't control can help. It can help you focus where you put your energy. And again, what makes you curious? Make a list about those subjects that you want to learn about or understand more about. So when you feel your mojo declining or this brownout coming back, rather than slumping in front of the TV, get fascinated by something. You know, maybe if you don't feel like running, just go and do some interval training in the park, or go and try a Zumba class, or do something completely unrelated and maybe listen to a podcast while going for a walk. The trick is to remember that it's your choice. You're in charge, and learning something new and satisfying your curiosity is really motivating. Now, on to the second part, which is mastery. This is all about deepening your learning, perhaps driven by that curiosity in the first instance, but it's also about prioritizing your development so that you can grow. And we know that that is highly motivational, and research proves it. So I'm going to look at mastery from the perspective of strengths, how you can understand your strengths, have a language for voicing them, and so you can consciously use your strengths more. Research shows us that operating to strengths and building on strengths is highly motivating, and it helps to build our confidence too. So here is a way that I like to think about strengths using the metaphor of a road network for the brain. And I'm just going to pop back onto the slides again, which is being very naughty. It's going onto the beginning slide. As I pull down here, let's find our strength slide. Here we go. This is a strength slide. So here's a map of Sydney. Many of you will recognize it. Imagine that you're town planners for the day. Hi, Grant, I saw you waving there. And that you've been asked to develop the road network for a new city called Sydney. Wow, what would you do differently if you could do that? You could develop it from scratch. So some of the roads are already there, and your job is to plan the rest. Now, since you have no way of knowing how people are actually going to use the roads, you decide at the beginning to make all the roads the same size and see how they're used in practice. If they're used a lot, if they're used frequently, you're going to widen the roads and you're going to add additional carriageways to increase their capacity. And if they're only used a little bit, you will leave them as they are, or maybe build some houses on the side, or dig them up and turn them into bicycle paths maybe. Now, it's the same with the brain through its development. While they ebb and they flow and change with different life events, the preferred routes for information within our brain, they're laid down as these superhighways, just like in Sydney, your A and your B roads and your bicycle paths. And these in turn, they determine the neural pathways and your unique blend of styles, processing styles that you rely on during your life. And at its simplest, your superhighways they're easier to access. They've got strong neural connections, so you can travel down those roads more readily and more automatically. Using those superhighways, they get stronger. They give rise to your strengths. Now, here is a language for your road network, underpinned by neuroscientific research. Sorry, just waiting for the slide to build there. The model we use in our business is the mind tool. It just gives you a descriptive language of some characteristics and some styles that emerge from your unique combination of your superhighways operating in different parts of your brain, such as reasoning and logic, or spontaneous and big picture, feelings and emotions, specific and detail. You can do it all, so it's not about competence, but your superhighways are the ones that you go to first. When information streams into your brain, where do you go to first? Your superhighways are the ones that are most accessible. They feel easier, they demand less energy, and they're more automatic to you. So here's a summary. I think this is easy to apply. So think for yourself now, where are your strengths? Is it with facts? Is it with ideas? Is it with feelings? Or is it with details? Or is it a combination of them? Ask yourself where your superhighways are. Where do you feel most at ease, most energized, most comfortable? And imagine, just think about if you're always operating in those uncomfortable areas in your bicycle paths, which of course you can get access to, imagine how draining that is, and therefore how demotivating it is. You're significantly more likely to experience motivation if you're operating and working with your strengths. So make friends with your strengths in your brain. And here's a question for you. Are you operating every day to your strengths? And I want to introduce you to a Hungarian-American psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, with the unpronounceable name. But he coined this amazing word flow that some of you will most likely be familiar with. And it was following his experiences as a prisoner during World War II. And he conducted a huge amount of research into contentment and happiness. He came up with this definition that you can read on the slide. It's a mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized, focused, full involvement and enjoyment in the process of that activity. It's great. Have you ever experienced flow when you've been completely absorbed in what you're doing, in the zone, when the task feels completely effortless? It really feels good, and it's more likely to happen for you when you're engaged in activities that play to your strengths. So when your superhighways are free flowing, there's no congestion there, no effort required, you can go in cruise control or warp speed. It's your choice. So what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I can't pronounce that name, believes is that the secret to a happy life is to learn to be engaged in as many areas of your life as possible and to keep curious, adding novelty and learning into your life, because what that does is it uses different parts of your brain and it helps to keep you energized and motivated. And the final piece of research that I want to show you is from Sweden. You can see the Swedish names at the bottom there. So some Swedish research, it found that people who are really prone to experience intrinsically motivated flow in their daily activity, they actually have more dopamine receptor sites available in the brain. So flow, again, it relates to dopamine production and its transmission around the brain. Right, off slide now. Here we go. Back to face to camera here. So this part of self-determination model, it's talked about mastery. We've brought that to life by discussing strengths and flow and that map of Sydney. So just think for yourself, what are your strengths? How can you expose yourself to more opportunity every day to use your strengths, not your bicycle paths, so that you can keep motivated, curious, exposing yourself to lots of novelty and learning, so you can learn new things and enter that lovely flow state. So 10 minutes to go, have that final stretch, and we're nearly there. So in the self-determination model, we've discussed autonomy and mastery, and the final part is purpose. I love working with clients around purpose. This is about understanding your why. It's about connecting to the reason for what you're doing, the contribution that you make in life or that your work makes to something bigger. It's about that contribution. It doesn't need to be anything spiritual necessarily. Many of my coaching clients are really clear that their why is perhaps about financial freedom or spending more time with their families or time freedom. Yeah, it could be otherwise to create a bigger impact on the world. One of my clients is all about sustainability. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just that you are clear on your purpose, because it can really help to align all your energy and your motivation and keep you motivated. And there are some really interesting neuroscience-based findings around a sense of purpose and connecting us to that. And one of them is that, or many of them are actually, that sense of purpose makes us biologically more resilient. There was one study that found that a strong purpose resulted in 72% lower risk of a stroke and 44% lower rate of cardiovascular disease. And that's because every day, if you're aligned to your purpose, you're motivated, you're operating to your strengths, and you're in a state of positive energy. And we also know that strong purpose produces what the neuroscientists call the trifecta of neurotransmitters. In the article I read, it said trifecta. I don't know why it didn't say trio, but 3 neurotransmitters. So oxytocin, which is for bonding, for empathy and social interaction, that always feels good. And oxytocin is actually produced when a mother first breastfeeds her baby. There's a huge amount of oxytocin streaming around the body. So it's all about bonding. Serotonin, it balances mood and as well as our old friend, the feel-good, motivating, incentivizing dopamine neurotransmitter. Now, purpose also connects to your emotions. 80% of our neurons are in this older part of the brain, the lower and the middle part of the brain. And we know that information reaches that part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, around 6 times faster than to the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain. So we get that motivating emotional alignment with a sense of purpose. So it really is well worth spending time to identify your purpose. Keep visiting it to keep aligned and motivated. Now, that's the final part of self-determination theory, purpose. A bit of a whistle-stop tour around the model. And I want to finish with a story. Nearly there. We've been through a lot this evening. It's not even 9 o'clock in the morning in the UK. But let me just finish with a story to keep you motivated. If you remember Anna, at the beginning, she's a little girl who's motivated by playing and her sunshiny days. And on a rainy day, she became demotivated. She just wanted to pull the covers over her head. Now, imagine that Anna had a different response and she decided she can't do anything about the weather, but it doesn't stop her being able to play. So maybe she can go and play in the puddles or ask her little brother to play with her inside. Now, because Anna is a very wise 6-year-old, and she understands she can't really control the weather because she did that control and not control list when she wakes up in the morning, she realizes it's always going to be rainy days. So she decided that the rain wasn't going to put her back to bed. She decided that she would have a talk on a rainy day with her favorite doll. Here's the doll here. And talk about what she was going to do to go inside to play. And they would have fun, whatever the weather. So there are 2 points I want to extract from that story. The first one is about playing. We seem to think that work is the opposite of play. It really is not. So we can keep motivated by having fun and playing. And the second thing is what Anna did was that she primed herself into a motivated, more positive state by talking to her doll. This is something that you can do. Priming refers to making associations just before doing something. So you can prime yourself perhaps by listening to music or having a cup of coffee. What is it you can associate with being motivated? Because expecting to be upbeat and motivated all the time, it just isn't realistic. So is it music? Is it giving your kids or your pets a hug? Is it looking at happy photos? Maybe some motivational quotes like I've got here? Or is it understanding your why? Last thing, I'm going to thank Anna, and I'm going to share with you that I didn't borrow this doll as my last prop. This is the character Merida, I think, from the movie Brave. And she's my priming tool. I have her on my desk. I gave it to my daughter when she was no longer interested in dolls. I have it on my desk. It's my primer to remind me to be brave in my decisions at work. So that's it. I just want to show you a last slide, Grant, if I may, because it's got a PDF on the end for people to look at so that they can download the research. Here we go. Hang on a minute. Here we go. There we go. That's the last slide. This is what we've covered. Absolutely loads. You can see the list. Take a photograph or take a note of that PDF. It's got all of the research if you're interested, and it will be up there for a few days. So do download it as soon as possible. Phew, we're done. Merida and my brain. That's it, done. Not yet 9 o'clock in the morning in the UK.
Fantastic. Wow. Absolutely brilliant. Let's give Gill an amazing hand. I've already asked people to type in their questions. I think, that was they're just so motivated right now. I just love that explanation, particularly having that understanding around the difference between, being motivated yourself, that intrinsic motivation. It's like I always say, like a lot of times people will call me a motivational speaker. And I always challenge that, because motivation that is long lasting, that's really beneficial, does come from within. So, you get a motivational speaker, they come in and they pump you up and you feel like you could do anything. And then you go out into the world and you go, Where did they go? They're not there with you. So I just love that the more that we can motivate ourselves, take inspiration from others, but motivate ourselves, the better it is. So fantastic. So that was great. People are saying, okay, Jill, can you do me a favor? Because they're asking for the link again. Can you?
Yes, of course. It's just the final slide.
No, hang on. Don't put it back up. Just
okay,
put the
okay,
link.
okay.
Just put the link in our chat.
Oh.
And I will.
In order to do that, I've got to copy it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Just leave it there. People can take a photo because I just realised I'm on 2 different computers, so I'm not going to be able to copy it from there and put it there anyway. So if you just leave it up there for a sec, people can take it.
I will do so.
Just take a photo quickly of that.
It's just a one-pager, and it has if anybody's interested in the research, it's got the research studies there that were on the slides.
Fantastic. All righty, so you can pop that off now because I'm sure that they've got it. And we want to see your face. Really fantastic performance. Really fantastic. Yeah, but we only saw a little tiny one of you, right? And we couldn't see your Lifetime Achievement Award. Show everyone your Lifetime Achievement Award. You have to. No, it's a joke.
Okay,
it's a joke between
this is
her
a
and
running
I.
joke between me and Grant, or Grant and I.
It's not a joke at all. It's extrinsic motivation that was well deserved. So anyway, so the question here: what energy? Oh, sorry, it's a compliment. I thought it was a question because it started with what? What energy, and awesome to learn more about the brain. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everyone.
Really fantastic performance. How do you gradually go off visible weaknesses in relation to the strengths you talked about?
Well, I think, and I talk about these as bicycle paths, don't I? I think that as in the whole emotional intelligence arena, it's all about awareness. So I'm not saying, don't enter your weaknesses. Hey, we all have to. I don't enjoy doing my tax return or my, I've got Grant here nodding as well, or my finances, but I have to do it. So I think maybe a way to perhaps go into these areas that you recognize are more weaknesses or gaps. I don't really like the word weaknesses, more gaps for you, is to think about how you can reward yourself when you do them, not just put them on a list and don't do anything around them. I think the understanding the neuroscience that sits behind it is really, really helpful, because it can give you that language for where are my strengths, where am I super motivated and automatically energized, and where are those gaps, where do I find it a little bit dull, so what can I choose to put into place to override that dullness, or give myself that bit of a dopamine kick afterwards. And it isn't always Netflix or a glass of wine.
Fantastic. I love that. Hey, there's no other questions there, Jill. So I think people are looking forward to that PDF. So we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts again for you, taking the time out on a beautiful sunny day in England and sharing with us. I really appreciate you. So I'm going to let you go now and have the rest of your day. And I'm going to just wrap this up. So can we give Jill another round of applause just as she is saying goodbye? And
thank you to everyone for listening, and to you, Grant, for putting together such a fantastic conference. So thank you very much. Enjoy your evening and your days. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.